So robberies and bad decisions have always been a topic of discussion in the MMA world and the UFC, and after this weekend at UFC Jacksonville, Overeem versus Harris, we witnessed a lot of bad decisions and robberies. We watched Claudia Gadelha beat Angela Hill, we watched Song Yadong beat Marlon Vera, we watched Dan Ige beat Edson Barboza. There were a lot of bad decisions that took place on that card, but when people ask me, what was a really bad robbery and bad decision in UFC history? I try to always lead them to the fight between Robbie Lawler and Carlos Condit. A lot of people bring up title fights in robberies and they talk about, obviously, Jones versus Reyes was criminal, but they also talk about GSP versus Johnny Hendricks. I feel as though the GSP-Johnny Hendricks fight was very close on rounds. Johnny Hendricks obviously hurt GSP more than GSP hurt Johnny Hendricks. However, if you're looking at it on a round-based system, which is how fights are scored, the fight was actually pretty close between Johnny Hendricks and GSP. However, Robbie Lawler versus Carlos Condit was criminal. I watched the fight again, and 5 days ago, the UFC posted this fight on their YouTube channel, which to me stank a little bit of bullshit, because we're just expecting a bunch of robberies at UFC Jacksonville because of how bad the judging was at UFC 249. There was a little bit of weird scorecards as well, but they weren't as bad as this weekend at UFC Jacksonville. And the UFC posted the biggest robbery in a title fight of all time around the same time, and I almost felt like it was the UFC saying, oh, you think these are bad decisions? Check this one out. And it's kind of like... and it kind of lets them off the hook. The judging in MMA is terrible, and the judging in Robbie Lawler versus Carlos Condit was fucking shocking. I love ruthless Robbie Lawler. I thought his reign at the time was amazing. He never had boring fights, but I've always thought to myself, Carlos Condit fucking beat Robbie Lawler. People always argue about, Johnny Hendricks, GSP, robbery. It was a close fucking fight. TJ Dillashaw, Dominic Cruz, robbery. But then I watched it again. I thought Dominic Cruz won. Not too hard to score, in my opinion. I thought Dominic Cruz beat TJ Dillashaw, but a close fight again. Robbie Lawler, Carlos Condit. I've never understood how the judges gave that fight to Robbie Lawler. Never understood how they gave that fight to Robbie Lawler. They gave Robbie Lawler round 3. But let's talk about the fight overall. Carlos Condit outlanded Robbie Lawler, and I'll get the official numbers right now, 176 to 92. I don't think there's been that high of a striking differential in a stand-up title fight in a very, very long time. Carlos Condit's almost doubled overall the strikes that he landed on Robbie Lawler than Robbie Lawler landed on him. Okay, even in dominant title fights, the strike numbers are often very close, unless obviously in McGregor versus Aldo, McGregor lands 2 punches, Aldo lands 1, he kind of doubles him on strikes as well. I get it, there's some loopholes in my theory here, but either way, Carlos Condit absolutely beats Robbie Lawler, and I don't think anyone talks about this fight enough. They just posted it on YouTube, and the entire comment section agrees with me, which I'm so glad that they agree with me, and everyone sees the fight the same way. Carlos Condit beat Robbie Lawler. He won round 1, he won round 3, he won round 4. Very simply, and honestly, even though Robbie Lawler had a great 5th round, Carlos Condit still landed 10 more strikes than him. 9 more strikes than him. And I know that Robbie Lawler landed cleaner shots and landed more aggressive shots that were a lot more hard. They were a lot more power-orientated shots, and that's why you could give Robbie Lawler the 5th round. But even still, Carlos Condit was robbed of a championship, and I have no idea to this day how those judges could have gave that fight to Robbie Lawler. Carlos Condit came out in that fight, and by the way, maybe one of the most impressive performances in a title fight for a very long time. Carlos Condit looks amazing in the fight. He dropped Robbie Lawler in round 1 and outstruck him 28 to 12. Clear round 1 for Carlos Condit. Round 2, Carlos Condit outstrikes Robbie Lawler again, 17 to 10. However, at one point in the fight, Carlos Condit's on one leg. Robbie Lawler lands a big shot. Carlos Condit goes down. It's a knockdown, I understand. Robbie Lawler gets that round 10-9. However, round 4, Carlos Condit comes back after round 3, which was a bit of a closer round, and absolutely dominates Robbie Lawler in round 4, landing 47 strikes to 6 of Robbie Lawler's in round 4. That's kind of unheard of how much he dominated Robbie Lawler there. And then in round 5, Carlos Condit's pushing the pace, but Robbie Lawler comes back at the end, and Robbie Lawler gets that round. Round 5 and round 2 are Robbie Lawler's. The only round in contention, which some judges gave to Robbie Lawler, is round 3, and I have no idea how they possibly gave that round to Robbie Lawler. Carlos Condit doubled Robbie Lawler in strikes on round 3. Robbie Lawler only landed 11 strikes. Carlos Condit landed 22, and they were significant strikes. Before people come out here and say, but Robbie Lawler landed the bigger shots, Carlos Condit was landing hard leg kicks, he was landing hard body kicks, front kicks to the body, a flying knee in the round as well. So if you want to talk to me about, but Lawler landed bigger, Carlos Condit was landing huge shots in round 3 as well. The only moment in round 3 that Robbie Lawler was winning was a short 30-second burst just after the minute mark of round 3. A short 30-second burst where Robbie Lawler landed about 3 punches on Carlos Condit. None of them rocked him, but they landed on the chin, and they looked like they were powerful shots because Robbie Lawler's throwing them, so they're powerful shots, of course. But the rest of the round, other than that 30 seconds, was Carlos Condit's fucking round, and he doubled Robbie Lawler in strikes. Not to mention, even in that 30-second window, where the judges thought that Robbie Lawler stole the round from Carlos Condit, Condit was landing back. Condit landed a flying knee in that 30-second window as well, a great flying knee, and the judges just didn't give him the round. I would love to go back in time and talk to some of these judges and try and get their opinion on why they gave that round to Robbie Lawler. But Jesus Christ, that was one of the biggest robberies I've ever seen. I just rewatched the fight again, and I always remember it being a bad decision. Always remember Carlos Condit versus Robbie Lawler being a bad decision. I always thought Carlos Condit won 3 rounds to 2. However, looking back again, I didn't realise how blatant it was. That was a robbery of the highest fucking degree, and no one brings it up when they talk about robberies in MMA. They always bring up GSP Hendricks, dude. GSP Hendricks was a razor close fight. I know Hendricks had moments where he rocked GSP and knocked him down, and GSP was all marked up. But on rounds, those were some close rounds. I remember the first 2 rounds were very close, and GSP could have stolen some of those rounds. I'm not angry at the decision in GSP versus Johnny Hendricks. It might have been a bad decision if you think Johnny Hendricks won, but even still, compared to Robbie Lawler versus Carlos Condit, I don't think there's ever been a worse robbery in MMA. I know there are some bad ones, like Leonard Garcia beating someone back in the day. I can't even remember who the fuck it was. To be honest, I think Diego Sanchez, Ross Pearson. That was a terrible, terrible fucking decision. Whatever his name is, Leonard Garcia had a bad decision against someone as well. I can't remember who it was. I think it actually might have been an Asian guy, Ben Nguyen, a member of the Nguyen family. I'm not too sure, but there have been some bad decisions in MMA. Ross Pearson versus Diego Sanchez was quite bad, but this fight was just plain and simple. Carlos Condit won, and what angers me the most about all of it is that Carlos Condit's career after he lost this fight, he handled the loss like a champ, but as soon as this fight was over, it was kind of like it's time for Carlos Condit to give up. He never looked the same. He never looked like he was in the same shape. He never looked like he was throwing as clean of combinations. It looked like after they stole this fight away from him and he had to work his way back up for another title shot, it just seemed to me as though Carlos Condit was done. It was the beginning of his losing streak. He then went on to fight Tyron Woodley and lost via an injury. I know Tyron Woodley always says, look what I did to Carlos Condit. Well, you kicked Carlos Condit in one leg, he span around with the kick, which you're supposed to do, and twisted his other leg up and tore his ACL. You did nothing to win that fight, and Carlos Condit got injured, and he was never the same since then. He just lost over and over and over again, and it just makes me angry, because in a right universe, where this fight was scored to Carlos Condit, because he clearly won round 3. 2 judges gave that to Robbie Lawler, and in a right universe, Carlos Condit, the natural born killer, goes down the legend for beating Robbie Lawler, and goes down as a UFC world champion, and now he never gets that moment. And it's just strange to me. It really is how they could give it to Robbie Lawler. I have no idea. I really have no argument to say that Robbie Lawler should have won that fight. I really don't. Carlos Condit landed more in the 3rd round. He also was landing great shots back. I know Robbie Lawler had a moment where he landed some big shots on Carlos's chin. Carlos was never rocked. He came right back. He was landing check hooks the whole time. He landed a huge flying knee and even rocked Robbie Lawler back a little bit as well. I have no idea how they could give this to Robbie Lawler. I just thought I'd mention it, because no one talks about it, and it was a blatant fucking robbery, and Carlos Condit, in my eyes, for the rest of history and the rest of time, will always be considered a UFC world champion, because he beat up Robbie Lawler. Robbie Lawler had 3 minutes where he was winning the overall fight. He had a 10-second window where he beat Carlos Condit in round 2, and by the way, still got outstruck in that round. He had a 30-second window where he was winning against Carlos Condit in round 3, and then he had a minute window at the end of round 5 where he was winning there as well. Carlos Condit won that fight, and for me, he'll always be a UFC champion. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. I just thought after some of the bad decisions this weekend, it's time to shine the light on a real bad fucking decision in UFC history that no one talks about, and I think that more people should talk about. And I also feel like more people are aware of this bad decision now that UFC posted the free fight on YouTube. It was criminal. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. And it could have costed Condit millions. Who knows? Condit might have won that fight, got what he wanted, started to set a legacy and been the best fighter there ever was. You don't know that. But he lost that fight, got it taken away from him. Everyone thought he won that fight other than the judges on the night, including Dana White, who came out and said that Carlos Condit should have won that fight afterwards, which Dana White never really says. I mean, Dana White, obviously when GSP was looking to vacate the belt, there was some anger there. But Dana White never usually comes out and disagrees with decisions. He always says, 2-2 going into the 5th, and just leaves it at that, and then doesn't even give his opinion. But in this fight, it was just so criminal, and I think I needed to say something. Carlos Condit, you're a champion in everyone's eyes. Natural born killer. I'm a huge fan. And to be honest with you, at the time, no one looked like a better fighter than Carlos Condit in that division. I don't give a fuck about results. The Carlos Condit that showed up against Robbie Lawler, and the Carlos Condit in general before the Robbie Lawler fight and during the Robbie Lawler fight, was one of the best fighters to watch in the UFC. And after he got that decision taken away from him, you could see it on him. He just didn't want it anymore. Fucking pisses me off. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. If you thought Marlon Vera versus Song Yadong was bad, just go and watch Condit versus Lawler, and you'll feel way better about Yadong versus Vera. You'll feel way better about Ige versus Barboza. Way better about Gedalia versus Angela Hill. You'll feel way better about every bad decision in UFC history. Go back and watch Robbie Lawler versus Carlos Condit. Let me know what you think. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Click that button there. Goodbye.